Welcome to another edition of Turn 6 Garage, and today I'm talking about the 130 series Toyota Yaris. Should you buy one? Is this a car that is worth the money you spend on it? Is this a car that if you want something cheap, reliable and economical, should be at the top of your list? Well, this specific car here is a 2019 Yaris Ascent with the 1.3 litre 2NZ FE engine and a 4-speed automatic gearbox. This is one of the newest 130 Yarises. The last ones were made in 2020, and it spans 9 years from 2011 to 2020. In that time there were multiple trims, there were multiple configurations, 3 and 5 door and different engines, both the same 2NZ FE generation engine in 1.3 and 1.5 guys. You can buy this either with a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic as listed here. Given that there's many of them around, should you consider this car? Well, one thing's for certain, the 1.3 litre engine and 4 gears at 100 kilometers an hour is not the sort of thing that likes going up hills. When it's at 100 and you're trying to go up a hill like I am now, you're going to find that only 4 ratios doesn't really help your cause. And you have to cruise at 4,000 RPM to go up a hill. So performance-wise, it's not there. You're better off in a manual, performance-wise, if that's what you need at least to go on a highway. The problem with this car is, if you are buying an automatic and you're going to be doing highway miles, you're going to find that it's going to be a little bit difficult to do them. However, on the plus side, this car is very, very easy to drive. One of the other downsides about this thing's high performance is the NVH. It's quite loud and quite boomy in here. But on the plus side, it's a very easy car to drive. It's very easy to turn. It's very easy to handle. The wheels, everything feels positive. It's very good if you're just starting to drive. And another thing to think about with this car is, of course, the immaculate Toyota reliability. This specific car really is in a class of its own in this super mini class of car in terms of reliability. There isn't anything to be concerned about here. As long as you maintain it, there's nothing to be worried about. There's not many electrics. The transmissions are relatively strong, both manual and automatic. The engine's strong. Okay, maybe some bits of trim may go with age, but again, there's not a lot to fault this car in reliability. If anything, that's one of the reasons why these are so popular. If you want a reliable super mini, this is what you're going to think of. This car isn't especially full of equipment, given that it's the base Ascent model, but in 2019 yet, your Bluetooth head unit, the reverse camera, your controls on the wheel, your 6 curtain airbags, and of course ESP. But it hasn't got forward collision avoidance. It also hasn't got Apple CarPlay and Android Audio either. But of course, while it might be bereft in some luxuries, it actually means that there's a lot less on this thing to go wrong. There's a lot less electronics in this car compared to so many more modern offerings that when they do ultimately break, you're going to have to think about. Things to really look out for on this thing more have to do with the car's owners and where it's been driven and what's happened to it. They're the main things to consider with the Yaris. It's not so much the car, it's the people who drive them. That's the one thing you'd be judging it on. If the person who drove this thing was a conscientious owner who maintained it and looked after it, even if the thing has 180,000 Ks, that's a good car. Because fundamentally, this engine can do well in excess of 300,000. Plenty of Yarises up for sale, older cars that have 280, 300 on the clock and they're still going strong. So the 2NZ FE is pretty strong. So if you find a high mileage car that's been maintained, that might be a better buy than a lower mileage car that's been abused. So I'd be keeping the mileage open on these things, given their reliability. You can really work with it and go find a good example, even if it is less money, because fundamentally, your money here is going to be spent on maintenance items and things that have or haven't been done. And if it's been well maintained, everything will have been done. It might actually be a cheaper car to buy, not only in what you pay, of course, the high mileage car will be cheaper to buy, but it might be cheaper to run because there's less you have to spend on it compared to a low mileage car that's been driven badly. So to think about it, this car, you really need to consider also who owned them. Fleets and rental companies bought these cars. Make sure the books are stamped up. If the thing has no books for the first 5 years of its life, I'd really hesitate on that car, because that could mean somebody has wound the odometer back. Common thing to think about with ex-fleet and ex-rental cars is just that it's all part and parcel. One of the biggest benefits of this car is the fuel economy. In the city, it does really well. On highways, it's not bad, but again, the lack of a 5-speed box really does make that number nowhere near as good as you would think compared to other cars with much more bigger. That number, there's not a lot to criticise the Yaris for what it is as a package. It's actually quite a solid little package that does very well for itself. And solid it is, because reliability-wise, these things have been very, very good to their owners. They do lots of Ks, and they're a car you shouldn't be afraid to buy second-hand. The other thing is, they are also very expensive for what they are, especially the slush box. Now, you could acquire a manual 130 series Yaris for about $8,000, get a 2011, 2012, 1.3 base trim YR at the time, 5-door, about 160, 170,000 Ks. Not bad. The equivalent K13 Micro is a couple of grand less though. And that would maybe sway me against the Nissan, sway me for the Nissan, although the Yaris is pretty good. The K13 would be a match for it given the mileage and what you'd be buying a K13 for. Because it's not $2,000 more in problems in a K13 with an HR series engine than an equivalent Yaris. It is bigger, but not by much. Automatics start at 10. So again, you're talking about an 11, 12, YR 1.3 in the 170 to 190,000 kilometre block. You could try and find one for a bit less, but again, we're talking in the 200s here, kilometre wise. It's not so bad compared to some of the others like Swifts and also other Japanese automatics. Even the Micros and Autos expensive. Mirage also is expensive. They're all Jazz. They're all expensive because the desirability is the 4-cylinder little hatchback with a slush box. You're effectively saying that if you want to buy a car like this, buying into a class that everyone wants to buy into. In this class of car, with that transmission combination, they're very popular. Resale on these things has actually grown because the new Yaris is really expensive. And I mean, the new Yaris is quite exy, to say the least. I'm talking about a list price for the base car of $23,990. Yeah, that's why these things have gone up. So a vehicle like this, an Ascent 2019, 55,000 kilometers, looking at about $19,500. It's lost a bit of money in the last year because more cars have come, but fundamentally, it's still more than it was worth new 3 years ago. Yeah, 50,000 car. So if you bought one and you need to upgrade to something bigger, you're actually going to make money on this thing. With that in mind, where would you go price-wise on it? I would be, of course I'm going to say go for a manual because I'm a manual driver. Of course I'm going to say think about buying one that's been well maintained, irrespective of the mileage. And again, in the manual, under 15 grand, you can come home with a really nice car. Heck, even 10 grand could bag you a 13, 14 YR 1.3, done about 120,000 Ks. It yields a good result. Or you can get a fully loaded ZR with about 150,000 for a similar price, depending on age, but it's in 3-door guys. And again, 15K, you're looking at about 16, 17 manual Yaris, although they became a lot less plentiful after 2016. So that would make sense. A 5-year-old manual Yaris at around 15k, although it is not far from what it was worth new, which does irk me a bit. In the automatics, a car like this, a facelifted Yaris, because I had 2 facelifts of the Yaris. There was the original face from 11 to 14, and then in late 2014 they came with a new facelift there, and then in late 2017 they came with this facelift, which is the car that I'm driving. Now, with that in mind, the automatics make a lot of sense if you're looking at the thing, surprisingly, in the higher echelon, so 15 to 19 grand. It actually makes a fair bit of sense of what they are. You can get yourself a car like this for 19 and a half, or you can get a 17 or an 18 early model of the facelifted Yaris, about 120,000 Ks, you're looking at about 17 grand. Still a bit of money, but compared to what you're getting in other hatchbacks, if you want something reliable, it makes some sense, because given that many of these cars, as we get newer, get less reliable. That's the reason why these hold their value so well. If you're looking for $15,000 motoring in a Yaris, you'd be looking at a car that would be 14, 15, maybe 16, or 17 with really high Ks on it. And again, they're mostly going to be in base Ascent trim or base YR trim. You get a 1.5 in the higher trimmed YRX, YRS and ZR. And look, for the performance difference, it isn't really worth it. You're getting more in the equipment, but performance-wise, they're not especially powerful, these things. You're not going to race off when the light's in one. And no, we did not get the original GR Yaris here. That's only Europe and Japan. So if I was going to be buying one of these cars, again, I'd be keeping it under 15 with a manual transmission. And the reason these hold their value so very, very well, especially in the higher end, is because once you get newer, there's fewer cars that are as solid and as reliable as this. A lot of the modern cars, electrical system issues, they're quite expensive to say the least. The Yaris's dependability and cost effectiveness is one of its biggest traits, and its biggest reason why it holds what it holds in terms of resale value. After all, there's a reason this thing lasted 9 years. There's a reason this thing sold as well as it did. Because if you were going to a place to buy cheap, reliable motoring, Toyota were offering a very good package for the money. So to sum up, should you buy a 130 series Yaris? You should. If you want a cheap, reliable car, cheap-ish, because they're a bit X-ier than they were new for some of them. If you want a car of this class, of this ilk, that's going to last you a significant period of time, you're not going to find anything else that's going to be this good. Sure, there are some good ones around, but you're fundamentally looking to buy a car that's this reliable, this is dependable. You're going to struggle finding a car as good as this for that. If you want to buy one of these, heck, even if you want to buy one for 10 grand and want to get 5 to 10 years out of it, you could. It's one of a handful of used cars you could buy where you could expect the lifespan of a new car trouble-free, even if it's got 200,000 Ks. That is just how good these cars really are.